Welcome to the Rig and Farm YouTube channel. In this video, we'll show you how we moved our chicks from their brooders onto grass, the newest baby bunnies, how we planted hundreds of fruits and vegetables, and some surprise gifts we received. The chicken area is looking much better 6 weeks after spreading grass seed. This grass will provide supplemental food as well as home for bugs that the birds will love to eat. We finally finished putting up the field fence for the bigger enclosure. Additional fencing will be added to do a better job of keeping the birds inside. As you can see, it doesn't prevent the chickens from escaping. Here she is an hour later nesting in the fire pit. Unfortunately, the fencing doesn't keep predators out. An opossum got into the coop a few nights ago, killed 2 chickens, and bit the bill off one of the ducks. She lived for a few days before passing away. We didn't want to show the carnage, but you can clearly see it was a massacre. We've taken measures since then to protect the coop at night. Poor Confit is our only duck now, and she seems very lonely. On a more positive note, Zelda had 8 healthy baby bunnies last week. Here they are 4 days later. After checking on these little ones, we noticed that Mary started making a nest for her babies that are on the way. She only had 2 babies last time, so we're hoping she'll have more with this litter. We dug 16 holes just outside of our garden beds to plant our raspberry plants. We have 3 different varieties that will give us fruit next year from spring through fall. They don't look like much now, so make sure you subscribe to our channel if you don't already to keep up with how they progress over the next year. We used wooden stakes and twine to mark an area for us to plant potatoes. What was supposed to be a nice day for this project turned into a very chilly day with some hail. The kids were going to help collect sticks and rocks, but they got cold and went into the house while Ashley and I worked despite the less than optimal weather. You can see that the kids got the tractor bucket about half filled for us. We ran more twine to mark the individual rows. We used a hoe to start trenching before remembering that we have a tractor. Well, that was a lot faster. Our soil, or should I say clay, is very compacted, so we had to go through and pull out the big chunks as well as the sticks and rocks that are plentiful. Time to plant 50 pounds of seed potatoes. Potato plants grow from potatoes that are growing eyes. Ideally, you want a minimum of 3 eyes sprouting before you put them in the ground. Potatoes with 6 or more eyes can be cut and allowed to dry for an additional few days to get another plant out of it. This variety is Pontiac Red. Like most red potatoes, this variety has a thin skin and firm, waxy texture. That means the skin is tender and doesn't need peeling, and it'll hold its shape very well when cooked. Some of our favorite ways to use this potato are in potato salad and home fries. The very first meal I ever cooked for Ashley included red potatoes fried in duck fat. I'm not going to say that was the meal that caused her to fall in love with me, but it definitely was a life-changing way to experience potatoes. We planted over 80 in this first row. Next, we covered them back with soil we'd removed. Because it was in clumps, we had to crumble it beforehand. We did another row just like this one afterward, but we didn't film it, because it would have looked the exact same as what you just saw. It's a little rough, but at least we have potatoes in the ground. We needed to move the chicks out of their brooders and onto the newly established grass, but we needed a way to provide shade and cover from rain. We set up our 10 by 20 foot carport with one section of the legs excluded and the electric poultry netting within the area we just fenced in for the other birds. Pallets were placed in there to elevate the 5-gallon and 2-gallon water buckets. Time to collect the birds. We put 6 of them at a time in this plastic tote to be transported to their new home. Freedom! Their feeders were put under the carport as well to keep them dry. These birds are much happier now. Next, we collected the Rudd Rangers. We put all 9 of them in the tote at once because they're so much smaller than the Cornish crosses. We divided the netting to keep the 2 chicken breeds separated in order to continue our feed cost experiment. Once all of the birds have been processed and weighed, we'll know which is more profitable. All the birds are where they'll live for the rest of their lives. The Rangers will be processed in another 6 to 8 weeks, and the Cornish cross will be ready in the next week or 2. If we were a conventional chicken farm, we would have over 700 chickens in the same amount of space the Rangers have. That is why you should get your chicken from small farms like ours and not the grocery store. Now it's time to hook up the Energizer to the netting. It couldn't quite reach, and then it slipped out of my hand and grazed my finger. Ow! I situated the cable better and tried again. Well, there we go. 8,000 kilovolts. That'll keep the chickens in and predators out. The next day, everyone seemed to be well adjusted. Hey, how did you get on this side? She got picked up and put over with the other Rangers. That night, they were all huddled up to stay warm. The following morning, they got fed, and the Cornish cross were having a feeding frenzy. The Rangers were a little more civilized. It was time to get the next variety of potatoes planted. We started the process the same as the prior day by using the tractor to cut a trench and sifting through the large pieces by hand. We moved on to this 50-pound box of Adirondack blue potatoes. Culinarily, these are very similar to the Pontiac Reds, but they are a purplish blue inside and out even when cooked, and they're extremely high in antioxidants. We did a little experiment to see if we could have an easier time planting this row. We used the tiller to break up the top few inches of soil to avoid the big chunks when trenching. We also thought it would be worth trying to dig the trench with a hoe to get a more precise depth than we did with the tractor bucket. As much as I love a good workout, this was quite exhausting. At least we got another 80 potatoes placed in the ground. Covering them was a little easier, but trenching by hand was not an option for the last row. That crazy chicken is in the tractor bucket! For the last row, we tilled, used the tractor to dig out the trench, threw the chunks onto the ground a few feet from the trench, and then tilled those. Covering the potatoes was super easy. We were able to get on our hands and knees and cover them by hand. This was by far the easiest and quickest row to plant and will be the only way we do it in the future. Now let's move on to our strawberry plants. We soaked the roots in water for about half an hour while we prepared our raised beds. Strawberries are perennial plants, so they will produce fruit for several years if they're properly cared for during each season. It is important that the crown of the plant isn't covered, because it needs sunlight to grow. The first thing we did was trim the roots to stimulate growth. Then we used this thin stick to gather the roots in one place so they go deep into the soil rather than fanning out as they're pushed downward. A little soil was packed in to hold it in place without covering the crown. Here's another one being planted. We placed them 12 inches apart and staggered the placement of each row to allow them plenty of room on all sides. The plants on the left are from last year. Strawberries shouldn't be allowed to grow on the plants their first year because they need all their energy to be focused on growing and establishing. Simply snip off the blossoms as they appear. Our second year plants will be allowed to grow berries for us to harvest. Strawberries get their name from their need for straw or some other barrier to surround the plant. Berries that touch soil will start to rot almost immediately, so the straw keeps the fruit protected until they're ready to be picked. You can see that we made sure that the crown was exposed. In addition to the 2 full beds plus a row of 3 varieties of strawberry, we also transplanted some veggies that we had started in our indoor growing setup. The trays had been in our small greenhouse for the last few weeks to get hardened to the climate outside before being placed into the raised garden beds. We received an unexpected delivery from Mason Tractor Company. That's where we bought our new tractor. We left them a really good review online because we had such a great experience. Inside the box was a letter. It read, "Nick, we appreciate you choosing to do business with MTC Blue Ridge. It means a lot to us that you took the time to leave us a positive review. We hope you enjoy these items." We got a hat, water bottle, koozies, coffee mug, keychain, and a $50 gift certificate. We need to buy a rear blade soon, so this will be helpful. My old Kubota hat needed to be retired after being worn during many farm projects over the last year. This new one is much better quality and will hopefully last longer. Make sure you check out the shop on our website if you're in the North Georgia area, because we're taking pre-orders for chicken. We do have a limited number for sale, so don't miss out on the tastiest chicken you'll ever eat. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time!